All right, COMP1050 Animation 2D Tools, Week 4, Part 5. And we're talking about publishing Flash documents in this one. We'll go a little slower on this one because some of this does pertain to things we want, right? Especially when we do it, we're going to do one section near the end of the course when it comes to publishing for mobile, because I think there's a big opportunity for us to publish things for iOS and Android. And we can do that by using Adobe Air. Let's take a look at that. So here we are in Flash. The other thing we want to talk about actually for your projects, even when you hand things in for me with your Flash, what you can do is you can do things like add in metadata, even for your little ad. Since you're here in the class, I can tell you to do this as well. You can add in metadata for your ad, so that way you have your name and all that stuff embedded in your FLA. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. Okay. So we're going to do this animated banner, right? It's interesting. We're doing a banner ad for this one, right? It's lesson 10, right? So we're going to go to different documents here. Let me just get there for a second. Just going to kill this and this. And we're going to open up the banner. I want to look at the end result for a second for the banner. Let's take a look. Here it is. And we'll run it. So this is what you're going to get. So cool, right? Like a little thing. Take a look again, guys. You have some animation going on for your banner. Now, do I expect you guys to deliver something like this to me tonight? Probably not, right? No, I'm just being honest. I get some cool stuff. You've got some clouds moving in the background. And again, this is the kind of stuff, especially these kind of graphics, that you see all the time on the web. All the time, right? Now this banner is not clickable, but it does some interesting stuff. Let's take a look at that again. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Bang. Car comes up, and all that animates nicely. Kind of in a 3D way. So kind of cool. How do they do it? Well, let's take a look at Start Banner FLA. So some of the stuff they've already given us, right? And the thing is, even with professional projects, you know, like I kind of say this a lot with some of my colleagues, but you know, we say no man is an island, right? And I mean that no woman is an island either, I guess, in some ways too, right? We can't just name men here. But basically, the way it is this: you know, you have to work with other people, and a lot of times you'll get some designs from your colleagues and your team, right? And then you, as a developer, you're going to have to wire it up to make the design work properly. Again, this is our part of our job, right? This part of our job. So again, right now, initially, all you have is this animation right here. Okay. Looks like we got most of everything we need, right, for our banner. But really, what we're talking about here is publishing. All right. So there's different options. When we publish, we typically publish for Flash Player 11.2, but you can choose to publish for Air for desktop or Air for Android, right? So the first thing we want to kind of talk about is, well, I'm not going to talk about testing too much, but publishing for the web. So there's different ways of publishing things. We can publish to the web, and with Flash Player, Adobe Air for desktop apps, and for iOS and Android devices. Those are the 3 ways to do it, right? So when we're publishing for the web, there's different considerations. We have 2 files we're going to produce. One is a Swift file, and the other one is an HTML file. And you've got to put both of those up to your web server in order for your file to work properly. Okay, you need to include your Swift file for sure. So one of the things we're going to do is we're going to pull up that Start Banner FLA, and we're going to go to the Publishing Settings button to see what we can do here. So let's go back here. So here's Publishing Settings. And if you notice, we have this HTML wrapper, which produces an HTML 10 start banner HTML file, right? This file's been built for Flash 11.2. Even though as of the writing it was 11.2, we've kind of improved our Flash players to 11.4, and I believe on the new CC, Adobe CC has your Flash version up to number 12, if I'm not wrong. Okay. So I like to choose 11.4 because that's the version that makes sense for me. So you can choose whichever version you want, right? So here's 11.4, right? You can choose earlier versions. Sometimes what happens is you'll have to export things because there might be a website or an application that can only use earlier versions of Flash, especially for different kinds of browsers. So if you're working for the government, you'll do this a lot. If you go to the advanced section, you can choose, again, different options for playback and for quality, right? Like right now, my quality is set to high. But the window mode is window. You can also make it so it's transparent windowless, opaque windowless, and so on. Different kinds of publishing options. And we can try some of these things out. For example, the scale and alignment has been set to default, show all. You can also say no border, exact fit, no scale. You can do all kinds of stuff to change different options of where the movie comes into play. For example, the HTML alignment is going to be default, which is left, but you can choose to put it to the right, top, or bottom. You can also align it center, left, or right. These are all things that you can add. Here's your advanced section, and you can change the JPEG quality of your images that you come out with. Now, typically it's 80%. You can go from 80 to 100. The higher you go, the bigger your file is going to be when you produce it. And again, these are things that you could play with on your own. Change the bit rate of your sounds. You can change the compression, as an example. If you want to get better compression, then you can choose LZMA compression for the only challenge with this is, I mean, it does make it a little bit, it makes it better, more compressed, but it also sometimes slows things down. So be cognizant of that, right? When we choose our HTML wrapper, we can also choose what we want to include, right? An example of that would be we can choose Flash only for a template, right? We can choose allow full screen, right? Flash with AI CC tracking, Flash with named anchors, or an image map, whatever we decide to output. I believe one day we're going to have the ability to export right text HTML. We don't have the ability to do that without using our Create.js, but there will be an option one day in Flash where anything you can do in Flash today with all your animations, timelines, and everything, you'll be able to export to HTML5 instead of Swift. 100% with no extra coding. You won't have to code your ActionScript again. It'll do it all for you. I really, truly believe that. It won't happen for a while. It may not be the exact same way that it happens today. Maybe we need another version of ActionScript to go, something to the next level. And by the way, ActionScript the way it is right now is great, but we may need to get to the next level where we can export everything from Flash into HTML5, and it'll be 99% correct. For now, though, we don't have that exact option. We have to choose different options from an export perspective. You can also detect if you want to. You can detect the version of Flash that you want to. You can click on Detect Flash Version. So if you want a minimum version of 11.2 or 11.4, you can detect it and then ask the user to install the latest version of Flash. you can change the display settings. You can choose to, in the HTML wrapper, you can choose to match movie for the size to play the Flash movie at the exact stage size set in Flash, right? This is mostly what we do. You can also select the pixel size. You can choose to make it smaller or larger. You can change it in percent to make it small. And sometimes you'll see that, like a little thumbnail of the Flash movie that's embedded in your website. And when you click on it, you can play it right there at that size, or you can expand it to make it full screen. So it allows you to do that as well. All right. I'm not going to go too much into these options. You can also change the playback settings. Sometimes what we want is we want for the movie to loop over and over again. That's typical for a Flash banner ad, as an example. And sometimes you want to to have a display menu. So let's go there for a second. So from a playback perspective, we can say we want this thing to loop. We can also say it's pause at the start, and so on. Another really cool tool is the bandwidth profiler, which allows us to, when we test the movie out, we can use the bandwidth profiler to see where the bandwidth is when we play our movie, right? And sometimes we'll have an area that we know we're going to have loss because it takes a whole hell of a lot more bandwidth to play a certain thing. And that's why, when we do Flash video, I've asked you for your assignment number 1, actually, for your Flash banner ad, that the movie's got to be less than 20 frames per second. Can't be higher than that, because the higher the bandwidth is for the movie, more frames per second, the more loss and jitter and all kinds of other stuff happen on the internet for now, right? More bandwidth than it takes. So, and that's why they ask us to do something that's less than 20 frames per second. But this bandwidth profiler allows us to analyze our bandwidth a little bit more when it comes to how our movie's reacting or moving. Here's a section that I think is very useful. I think we should do it when we publish any movie in Flash, whether you do it for your Flash banner ad tonight or another project. I think it's something we can do. So we can go to Publish Settings. And here under Flash, as an example, we have Include XMP Metadata. There's a little section right here, right? If you click on the little wrench, it allows us to put in the document title, the author, right? The author's title, a description of what this thing is about, a type of rating, and so on. So all kinds of information that we can put in here for from everything from camera to GPS data, to video data, to audio data, everything we want to put in here to include, and it allows us to create ways of better tracking our movies, our Flash movies, from an SEO perspective, through a browser and a search engine, right? So definitely do that. So I would say if you can click on XMP metadata, that's good from a SEO perspective, or better anyway. So again, what we want to kind of hit is add things in like in the keywords field, the type of keywords that match up with the FLA that you're creating, the Flash file, right? Previously to this, before way back in the day, then you had a lot of metadata that we'd add in, and it would help us find Flash content a little better. Nowadays, browsers and Google itself largely they ignore it, but there are some parts of the metadata from a keywords perspective that they take in, as long as it's not overly long. Okay, so you can take a look at that XMP metadata for yourself. I encourage you to do that. And again, when we go back to our Flash document, it's right here with a wrench under the Advanced section. Okay. So when we want to publish, we want to create a file to publish for the web, that's okay. But we can also publish our Flash files for the desktop, right? And we can use Adobe Air for that. But we need to create a projector, that's what they're called, a projector for Mac or PC. So depending on what you're writing your application for, and this would be like a standalone app, guys, like for it to work on desktop or like a PC or Mac, right? The only thing that you would have that you need to install for PC or Mac is Adobe Air. And if you install Adobe Air for your PC or your Mac, you've got a UI that you can write for your company. It's really, really quite cool. And of course, you can take advantage of all the Flash features from a UI creator perspective that you wouldn't normally have. Okay, so when we go to publish settings, right, for our little movie, right, we have a little banner ad if you really want to make it for this. We can use, instead of just our HTML wrapper, we can make a Win or Mac projector. So let's go there. So here's our publish settings, right? We can also include a Win and Mac projector. So we can make it an executable file, an exe, for our banner ad, as well as an app file for our Macintosh projector. Right? It allows us to do that. Important thing is when we have TLF text for our banner ad, right, as an example, it's always a good idea to embed the text into our code, so that way we don't lose. I mean, sometimes we can do is convert it to outlines. That's another methodology as well. But if it's moving text, we want to try and embed it so that way we can use it, even if the user at the other end doesn't have the fonts that we're using, right? So any kind of text, like for example, welcome to Meridian. If we don't have this text, right, we want to embed it, we've got to include it in our file. We talked about embedding in an earlier lesson. But you can follow the instructions here if you're interested. If you want to look at 10start restaurant guide.fla, we can create this Air application for desktop. Let's take a look. So remember we did that restaurant guide. That was kind of cool. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing, not the end one. And here it is. And if I run it, we have a little bit of code there already. But actually what it's doing is it's not producing a Flash player. This is Adobe Air that I'm seeing here, right? And again, it does the same kind of thing that we had programmed before. All the same kind of details exist. What we want to do, if you notice, is Air 3.2 for desktop. I can move this to Air 3.4 for desktop because that's the latest version that I have, right? And if I want to, again, I can publish this movie for Air, for that version of Air. And I love it when the window is so big that my Mac can't see it. It's crazy. Anyways, Air 3.4, and if I run it again, right, it'll work just the same. Here's the main menu. Everything's exactly the same as it was in the last guide that we used. It also gives us some interesting output. It says 500K of after compression, so, or almost 500. So it's 499 bytes, which is about 405 kilobytes. Okay. So again, we can open this dialog box and we can change the type of package. We can decide on a couple things that are built in. We can name the package for Mac or for Windows. Right, let's take a look. So if I go back to Flash and I go to, instead of clicking on here, go back to scene 1. And let's take a look at the show all. And if I go to publish settings here, so here's the general tab. I've got my output file, that's the air file. Here's my Mac installer. It's going to be a DMG, so I can create my DMG file for Mac. You know, I can name all the settings I want, and I can also change things like the window style, the render mode, and so on. All these things, there's a lot of little options that I can change when I export from, you know, with Air. And again, it works really, really great. I think there's no issues exporting it with Air for Mac or for Windows. If we go custom Chrome transparent for the window style, we can do that. As for signature, in the signature tab, sometimes we need to create a new unsigned signature. This is like, you know, for example, is I want to make a certificate, but I'm not going to sell this application, so I can make my own self-signed certificate here, right? So let's say, for example, my publisher name, I'll call it Georgian College, and we'll say Computer Studies, organization Georgian College, country, we can pull down Canada, we can pull down Canada. How about we just type it? How about not? Where is it? Sorry. Okay, Canada. I can create a password. The type. And again, they might choose a different type of encryption. I think 1024 is fine. And I can create a certificate, and I'll call this restaurant cert, rest cert, and press OK. I can't create a self-style certificate, I guess. It just won't allow me to. Oh, I didn't do an icon. Maybe that's why. Nope, doesn't like it. Right, don't allow it, so I will not do it. So you create a self-signed certificate, and I can choose an icon. There's an icon file for both 16 that's built into your courses here. The course files, lesson 4, code archive. Underneath that there are app icons for publish, and I can choose restaurant guide. Did I choose the wrong one? 128 by 128. Oop, I'll be okay. Let's try that again. App icons for publish. There we go. Restaurant guide. That'll be your app icon. And then we can press OK from there. There's advanced. We can choose other options here for initial window settings, how big they are, the window, the type of languages we have. And there's many, many, many options for export features. So stuff you can definitely explore when you're creating an Air application. And actually, if you think about it, you can totally install this thing for Mac or PC. If you just follow the instructions, you can actually have a complete self-installer, an exe file or a DMG. Publishing for mobile is very similar. And again, you just choose Air for Android or Air for iOS, and then you can create a very quick application. they kind of have this very simple, a mobile app. It looks like a mobile app, same size, doesn't really do anything though. Okay. They have very simple animation. The thing that you can do is you can use this controller. Let me just take a look at how this looks here. If I go to Flash, what's built in, if I go to More, like I showed you guys before, right? There is a way for us to install things for Android. If I want to check my accelerometer, here it is. So here's my accelerometer options, right? I press OK, and I've got my basic ball accelerometer. So for people who would like that, here it is. If I run it, it's going to run it with my simulator for Android, right? And here I can simulate the accelerometer by moving this around, right? So here's my accelerometer for here's the phone, right? And if I want to twist it different ways, for example, I go to the Z, I can move it back and forth, the ball. The Y and the X moves it different ways. So here I am, I want to tilt it this way, whoop, and then I can test my accelerometer back and forth, and left and right. There we go. So you can test the accelerometer of different, you know, for your file, and it's all the action script is that you want to see. If you want to see how that all works, it's right here, right? And actually, you can use the action script that's inside your code snippets to create most of the movement that you need for a mobile app using ActionScript, right? This is where it's at right here. We'll be exploring this more towards the later part of the course, this kind of thing, using mobile sensors as we move towards making our game. And they'll show us the same thing here in this little sequence of slides. They're kind of going to do the same thing. That you can create different kinds of interactions: swipe, a touch, pinch, a zoom, all kinds of stuff that you can change and try out with your touch layer. So you can simulate what it's like on a mobile device. We talked about Create.js. The keys to make a good Create.js code, right, for it to work with Create.js, is two things you have to know. So far, it doesn't support motion tweens. So if you're going to export things with Create.js, motion tweens are out. Okay, an example of that would be like this. Here's my Flash document. I'm going to create a new one with ActionScript 3. I'm going to make a ball, right? Here's my oval, right? Let's make it a circle. There I am. And what I'm going to do is use my selection tool. I'm going to change my color, instead of a color, to a radial gradient. There I am, radial gradient. Actually, let's do the other way around. I'll change it the other way around. This way. Okay, so there's our radial. We got our ball. Here it is, right? And what we're going to do with it is we're going to start it from the left side of the screen. We'll name this layer ball, to the right side of the screen, right? We will create 24 frames. Here's 24 frames. I will put in a keyframe at the end, right? And in the middle, instead of creating a motion tween, I'm going to create a classic tween. So right-click, create classic tween, right? So again, if you notice, this thing doesn't do much. It goes from here to here, right? Here, what I want to do is I want to kind of pull this to the right, right? So now it'll track the motion of the ball from left to right. Actually, let's move it even further out. Here we go. Boom. Boom. If all I do is this, and nothing else, some kind of animation, and I export it with publish with my Create.js toolkit for Create.js. Let's take a look. So here I am. I'm publishing for Create.js. It says for me to save the FLA. I'm going to call this ball.fla file, save as, and I'll save it on my desktop just for this demo. So we'll call it ball.fla, save. And what we'll do is we'll run it. We run the export. So run, publish. We're using the toolkit for Create.js. If you notice, nothing happens. How come? Right? We don't have any action script. We don't have anything else in there. And if I run the movie, it does work, right? But when it comes from me running it, publishing it, as an example, it doesn't do anything because there's issues. And some of the issues around Create.js are, first of all, part of it is our publishing settings, what we publish in there. And the other thing is the type of objects that it'll support. Create.js has problems with ovals right now. I'm just telling you, if I made this instead of a ball, so here's our ball, it's a graphic. If I look at our the stuff that I've exported for this thing, so here's our file, our desktop, right? There's nothing going on here. It should actually show us a ball moving from left to right. So here's it creates a JavaScript file and this ball JS, as well as some other files that we need. Okay. So if I open up this HTML document with Dreamweaver, just take a look and see what it does. There's a couple things that we can notice right away, right? So it has imported 3 different JavaScript libraries here. One of them is Easel.js, there's Tween.js, and there's MovieClip. So those 3 things, right? It's created our canvas at 550 by 400, and it actually allows us to run the ball, but it doesn't actually do anything. So why is that? Well, if we look at ball.js, it defines the shape of the ball, right? And it kind of has a problem with doing this kind of thing. I'll give you an example. Instead of using the ball, we'll make a rectangle instead. Here we're back to this. And we're also going to keep our assets on the screen. So we're not going to put them on the pasteboard somewhere. We're going to keep them on the here on the stage. Right? So here I am. And again, if I scrub back and forth, the ball stays on the stage now. Let me just export one more time. And again, you see that there's nothing going on here. If I switch this out, so I take the ball off the screen, the stage, and I put in a rectangle, make it a square. Here's a square, and we'll leave the gradient there. It has a problem with these things, you know. So here it is. Here's my timeline, and now you can see that my classic tween is broken, right? Because I go from here to there, and it becomes a ball. So that's not cool. So let's just erase all that. Remove frames. I meant to do this. So here's my square. Let's just change this thing. We'll take the gradient away and make it a solid color. So we'll make it black, something that the web understands. And then I'll make it 24 frames again. I'll add a keyframe, right? And I will remove the tween, and I will add in a classic tween. So here's our classic tween. here. I'm going to put in a, you know what, let's just do this whole layer again, because it's remembered everything from last time. So this time we'll call it a square. We'll get rid of the ball. And we'll put in a rectangle, like I said, which is going to be a square. There it is. Okay. So we've got our, we're going to add in a keyframe here at the end. Insert keyframe. And we are going to move in the middle. We're going to create a classic tween. And what's going to happen is it's going to move from here. When it goes to the end, it's going to move to here. So there it is, moving back and forth. Now we're going to export it again. We're going to save it. Even though it's called ball.fla, we'll save it and export it, publish it, and we still don't get it. Again, issues when it comes to the export. There's nothing going on. There's nothing that should stop us stop this from happening in any way. But we're having some issues. From a timeline perspective, there's really nothing going on. It's just a little bit of animation going from left to right. If I was to change this to a motion tween, so let's just get rid of this, delete layers, and add in the rectangle again. And this time, when I click 24, add in a keyframe and insert a motion tween. Right? And now I'm going to drag this thing from here to here, and then another keyframe maybe to there, or maybe the third one to the end, which we're going to put over here. Maybe there we go. I run the movie. Oh, boop. Some kind of weird heartbeat, right? With a square. This time, if I export it, it happens, right? Why? Because it likes motion tweens. Like I said, it doesn't like motion. It doesn't like classic tweens. What I meant to say, it likes motion tweens very much because it converts this to frame-by-frame animation. This is actual HTML5 code, right? I can convert this instead of this type of thing, right? So let's say I don't want to do this, and I want to add in another layer. And let's add in, this will be the ball layer. That'll be the square layer. So here's my ball layer. I'm going to lock my other layer, put in my oval down here. And for this one, instead of making it pure black, I'm going to make it colored with a bit of a radial gradient. There we go. Here I'm going to add in another motion tween. And the motion tween, I'm going to move this straight up to the corner and out. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like. So it's going to go whoop. They're going to pass through each other. Right? So a little bit more complicated animation. And now let's see if I can export this thing for it to work. So publish, and it works. So here's the animation on HTML5. So it's not like it can't happen. If you have very simple animations, you use motion tweens, you don't have any action script, right? You can create an animation with yeah, even with text and so on. If you convert the text to outlines from Illustrator, you can do all kinds of stuff straight with the toolkit for Create.js. If you want more interactivity, if you want things like for the objects to respond to mouse clicks and so on, you cannot expect that any of your action script will be converted to JavaScript. You have to convert everything manually yourself. All right. What you can do also is you can create projects. If you go Window Project, right, you can actually create your projects, as well as, instead of just a file, you can have a project, a new project as well. Let's take a look at that. So I go Windows, Project, and then from here, if you notice, I can create new project. I can call this Ball and Square. Right? I can choose where it's going to go. Right now I want it to go to my desktop, so I can just have a cluttered desktop, because that's how I feel. Choose. And what was that?
It hurts a little bit.
I know it does. It's crazy. And then create type of output. So target is Flash 11.4, Flash player. And click on Create Project. Do you want to save the changes you made to the document author shared assets.fla? Sure. And I'll save that as well. So it adds a bunch of little FLA documents for my project. If I go to my library, right now you can see that it's the Ball FLA library. If I go back out to my desktop here, I've got a crap load of files that it's created. Just threw them all up on my desktop, and you can see that there's tons and tons of little additional files that'll leave FLA files that it'll create, that'll be bundled with my Ball Swift file. And what it allows you to do is it allows you to share things like your libraries, library symbols. So you create library symbols, and you can take them from other FLA files as well, and different projects, and organize your the files you're working on in a better way. Okay, I will let you read the rest for your, for your own whatever you choose to do with it. I'm gonna kind of end it here with a bit of a chat, right? So what have we talked about while I clean up my desktop? We've talked about a bunch of different things today, all relating to publishing and options that we currently won't use for the course, but I've put some stuff there for you that are some of the pieces that are interesting for you that you can take a look at your own leisure. I think if you need them for work, they're there for you to use. But up until now, so we're week 4, we've covered, again, skimmed over some of the stuff, some today, because for us to go into details about how to put movies together, I just don't think that's really conducive. But I wanted to mention it to you because there's some really cool little things that you can take for your own little projects. But again, the challenge is for next week, and this is not a 4-mark kind of thing. See if you can kind of pull off something like this tank game like we talked about. So let me just launch this thing again. So here we are, and we're using it. Yeah. So here we are. I'm just going to cancel out of this file here and go into the tank game. So here's my tank game, and the challenge is, can you make something as simple as this, right? If you notice, I've got a couple of links here. I've got a body, a bullet, and a cannon. There's different files that handle different pieces of the movement, right? So again, when I launch my app, it looks like this, tank file. I could similarly make this a different size screen as well. Like if I wanted to make this something that's compatible with, instead of Flash, I wanted to go into Air for iOS. Here I am, and I'm going to publish my tank for iOS. If there's any issues, we'll see. So here's my tank for iOS, right? I can still use my keys. Obviously, that doesn't make sense. I should be able to use my touch controls. So I'd have to change my controls for iOS, right, so that they're touchables and swipeable. Obviously, that's not going to work. A spacebar doesn't work in iOS unless I have a keyboard or something like that. But this is the iOS simulator. Now, because I don't have anything to do with my accelerometer, the accelerometer doesn't really do much. Touch and gesture, I can kind of turn the touch layer on, right? But I'm not keyed to making touches. If I wanted to, and if I wanted to change the position of my turret, wherever my mouse is moving, or my finger in this particular case, I kind of have to do some kind of swipe. Here's a click and drag, which is like a touch and drag more than anything else. A press and tap, I can do that. A pan, a rotate, right? Here's my rotating here, rotating around. All those things you can test with your simulator. Now, will it affect my tank? No, right? It's still going to respond in the same way. So I'm still going to be able to use my keys because I haven't programmed touch for this thing. Doesn't mean that I couldn't do it. Don't you love that sound? So challenge for you is, it doesn't have to be a tank. Get a simple vehicle. Try and do some simple animation with it. You can use the cow from our Python, right? And put that together. Whatever you want to do, try and figure it out. Fool around with the interface. One more thing before we go. Let's suppose that I want to load up the same document in Flash Builder, right? Just to show you this. So here I'm going to close off Flash and Dreamweaver, so I don't need those two things. And I'm going to go to my developer toolkit here and go to Flash Builder. So Flash Builder is based off of the Eclipse framework, and you're going to notice very quickly what it looks like. So here's Flash Builder, right? And here's my tank game. I can look at my source files for my tank game as an example, right? Here it is. So here's my tank.as file. If I open that up, it's a different way of looking at it. So it is a much better IDE because it is an IDE, right? This isn't now, you're outside of Flash itself. This is a pure IDE that we're used to. We've done already things together. We've done things like Python with it. I've done Java with it, same kind of IDE. And now we can do ActionScript with it. It has the same kind of code hinting. So if I want to start typing something here for my tank, like for example, I want to add an event listener, I can start typing stage, dot, and it's going to bring up the same code hinting that I would expect for me to have with any other application. Okay, so can I use Flash Builder for this course? The answer is I can't do it. Not because I don't want to do it, and there might be times where I shift into Flash Builder when we're doing our game, but only because on your Macs in front of you, you don't have it, right? So I can't demand that you use it. Okay. Again, all the code hinting that you'd want, and a really nice environment. It also shows you your tank class, different elements, the same as you would have in any Eclipse code whatsoever. If I want to run it, if I want to try and test it out, I can go. I want to run the movie. I can do that, right? And it'll run it. Yeah, I forgot. It says tank.as does not exist. It might have been deleted. But what it'll do is it'll allow you to run the movie within Flash, right? It says PHP script, but it's not that. I can create a run configuration for this just like I normally can, and it'll run great, right? Here we go. Test movie in Flash Professional. Publish in Flash Professional. If we do this, right, I'd have to run Flash Professional. You can test your movie, and it would work just the same, right? So here I can pull up Flash again just to have it open. And Flash Builder is really its companion. Unfortunately, it's not a free plugin at all. Right, so here we are. And again, I can go play in Flash Professional. It doesn't work, of course. Please modify the Flash Professional target file, project property, or create the FLA file, and then try the operation again. Yeah. So basically what it's saying is, I can do this, but I got to do it from Flash. Right, so if I open up tank.fla, and if I want to modify it, I have to choose Flash Builder. And then from there, it'll create a project file and so on, and it'll launch my app right here. Right. There it is. Okay, and then I can run the same file right in Flash Professional, but I can write everything I want here in Flash Builder. Right, so again, I think this is a valid tool. If you're a PC guy, like I mentioned at the beginning of this session, take a look at Flash Develop. Okay, so let's just close all this off. Flash Develop. Flash Develop. It's free and open source. I recommend it. It's got some really cool features, good code hinting, and even though we're not going to be covering it, I think you'll see that it's very, very quick to learn, and it allows you, as a PC guy, to avoid some of the stuff that you would do in Flash if you don't like using the Flash environment at all, right? And you don't have to use Flash Builder. It's not a paid-for app, right? Which is a good thing. And we'll end it there.